Hi guys, it's Megan. Welcome back to the library. Today I'm going to show you all the books I read in January because I actually read 5 whole books. I know it's crazy. I read a couple of books in December as well and one book in November that I'll tell you about too, so let's get into it. So the first book I read in January, and I'll go ahead and spoil the 2 books I also read in December. I read a whole trilogy and I read, well, it's going to be more than a trilogy, but I read the Nevermore series, which there's 3 of these right now by Jessica Townsend. These are middle grade fantasy and they're the closest things to Harry Potter that I've ever read, and they are amazing. I love them so much. Oh, I have to stop and smell them, as always. My first 2 books I've actually loaned to my mom, and she's reading those. She's on the first one, and she likes it too. But even for someone who doesn't read middle grade anymore, these are amazing, and you can see they're actually pretty chunky. Most people, I feel like, have heard of these if you read middle grade at all, but if you have not, then the first book is called The Trials of Morrigan Crow. It's just called Nevermore. The second one is Wondersmith, The Hunt. No, I actually forgot the subtitle of the second one. But anyway, this one is Hollowpox, and then the 4th one coming out in October is called Silverborn, and it follows this girl who in the first book is like known as a cursed child, and she has sort of bad luck that follows her but like causes other people bad luck, and she gets her family's not very supportive of her, but she gets kind of chosen to be in this society or to train for it, and she has to face these trials to get in. And I didn't think that sounded great because I don't really care about trials and things like that, but it's not what I expected. More so it's about the whimsy and the magic of the world, and I seriously, it's more, I would say it's even more imaginative potentially than Harry Potter, and it's funnier than Harry Potter. It's possibly better written than Harry Potter, and so I still love Harry Potter more, but because the one thing I didn't care about as much in this one are the characters. I'm not really attached to any of them. There is a character named Jupiter North who kind of runs this hotel that she lives in that's a very whimsical Hogwarts-like hotel, and it's not where she goes to like school though. Like the society she joins is somewhere else, so that's kind of neat because then there's like 2 magical places, whereas at Hogwarts they like live there and go to school there. In this case, she lives in one magical place and then like sort of works in another magical place. But Jupiter North is this like redheaded, just outlandish character who just sort of flaunts the rules of everything, and that's why he's pretty cool. He's kind of like her mentor basically, and so I don't know, I really liked him. There are some characters that have powers in this world. She kind of discovers a power that she has and has to develop it throughout the series. But one of the things that I like the best about this is the villain character is not just like evil Lord Voldemort. He's evil. It's good guy versus bad guy. There's a little more to it than that. Yes, he is bad, but there's some other bad stuff going on in the world too. And I think she's gonna have to even kind of team up with the villain. So I feel like that's really interesting. This book that I read, Hollowpox, is actually, it's very similar to like a pandemic that goes on amongst some of the animal like characters in the story. They have to figure out a cure for it. So I don't know, it even reminded me of the pandemic. And I know it came out in like early 2020, right when the pandemic started. So it's kind of ironic. But anyway, I gave all the books 5 stars. I think they get better as they go. So I highly recommend all of them. And I think you should keep reading them because they truly get even better, which is absolutely amazing. And I cannot wait for book 4. So 2 more books that I read in the month of January that I gave 5 stars to both of them, and they are now all-time favorites, especially the first one. Like, I absolutely love these books and I highly recommend them to anyone, and that is Vicious and Vengeful by V.E. Schwab. I read both of these audiobook wise and then bought the physical books because I have to have them because I'm going to be rereading these 100% for sure and trying to force my husband to read them as well. So if you don't know, I feel like a lot of people have heard of this series before. You've probably read it. Maybe if you've heard of V.E. Schwab, you've probably read this series. But Vicious follows a character named Victor Vale, which is like the coolest name ever either too. He sounds like a superhero or something, but he's not really a hero. That's the thing about these characters. They're very morally gray. But anyway, he and this guy that he meets in college named Eli, they are trying to find the secret to becoming extraordinaries, which they call them EOs. They basically have powers kind of like an X-Men or something. And the trick is that you have to have a near-death experience. You actually have to die and then come back. And they wind up doing this. They actually try to kill themselves and then come back so that they can have powers. And they each get a different power, and I won't even spoil what the power is because that's pretty exciting. But they each get different powers. And then something happens and they become arch enemies. So the whole book is them trying to basically get revenge on each other. They both think that they are in the right, but both of them are very morally gray. People say they're morally gray. I think they're both pretty much bad. Like, they're straight up bad people. They do not mind to kill, you know, if it gets them what they want. I think that's probably pretty bad. But there's some other side characters that you get to know really, really well. The character work is amazing in this. And the side characters, I don't know, are just as good as the actual characters. The second book introduces way more kind of side characters and villains and things, and I liked it, especially because it is very radically different from book one, I thought, because it does focus on a whole different plot. You can read this and it's a full story. Like, you don't have to have this as a sequel. Like, this is a full story in itself and it's fine. But I don't know that she even planned to write a sequel at first. But this one's still really, really good. I still gave it 5 stars. I don't think I liked it quite as well as the first one. But if she ever wrote a third one, I know there was a rumor that she was going to write a third one called Victorious, but somebody else said that, well, no, she said in an interview a couple years ago that the idea for Victorious was combined with the idea for Vengeful, and that it's really just one book now. But if she ever did write a third one, I would 100% read it, because these are so good. I have higher hopes now for V.E. Schwab, because I hated the second and third books in the Shades of Magic trilogy, loved Darker Shade of Magic, but now I have higher hopes for this author, because, I mean, she's just a master storyteller, is all I can say. Like, the amount of planning that goes into this, because the chapters are super short, and it'll be like 6 hours until midnight, Merritt Central Precinct, and the chapters will only be a couple pages long, and then it'll be like, there'll be a chapter that's like 10 years ago or last year in this other place, and the way it's weaved together with jumping through time sounds like it's confusing and not really well written, but it's actually, I think it's like genius how she did this and was able to string the story together in that manner. So she's a wonderful storyteller, 5 stars, 100% recommend, like some of my favorite books ever. So those are all the 5-star books I read for sure. Now, I did read some books that I have enjoyed, but they're more like 4 or 3.5 stars. And that is this series, I think it's called the Something Dark and Holy trilogy. So in December, I read Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. And in January, I read Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan. Why did I even say her name again? I don't know. I'm gonna read the third one, which is called Blessed Monsters. It's on my list like right now to read. I'm probably gonna read it like after I finish the book that I'm about to read next, so like 2 books from now. So the first one was a decent size. I mean, like small, not insane for a fantasy, but then they got progressively bigger, so this one took a little bit longer, but I'm glad that I got to read it physically, because we had a lot of snow days, it was still Christmas break and stuff, and I actually had time to read these physically. So I found this used at a bookstore and had no idea that it was YA and that it was a lot of romance. But it's not just romance, there's actually a lot more going on than romance. It's very much about the world building. Honestly, the logic in this book does not make much sense, I'm not gonna lie. But it's about a girl named Nadia who hears gods in her head. And there are some people in this world that are clerics that can talk to like maybe one god, but she can talk to the whole pantheon of gods. And this is like incredibly rare, and she's the only one who can do this. And they need her to help win this war, because her country is basically at war with this other country. And her country believes that the only way that you should use magic is through the gods, that's the way it's meant to be used. Well, the other country, they have abandoned the gods entirely, and they only use magic through what's basically like blood magic. And so basically each one of them thinks that they're in the right. There's also like witches, which is like a third type of magic. So I do think the magic element's cool. It's very fast paced. I mean, there's definitely some pros and cons. It does go back and forth between 2 different characters' points of view. There's a prince from the enemy country, and you follow him as well. And I think he's actually the best character. I honestly wish that he was the love interest, because the actual love interest, of course, they kind of fall in love like immediately or have a thing for each other immediately. And I'm like, did they even have a conversation? There's some things that happened that did surprise me, so I enjoyed that element of it. If you're a closer reader than I am, you'll probably figure it out ahead of time, but I just didn't, apparently. Apparently I just never see anything coming. The second one, Ruthless Gods, I didn't think was quite as good, because just the logic of it made no sense. I mean, like, one of the characters who is the bad villain but love interest guy, he goes with them on this adventure, and they know he's bad, and he basically is like, yeah, we might betray each other, but we might not. We need to help each other, but are we gonna help each other? And I'm like, why are they even traveling together? I don't know, the whole book really makes no sense. But anyway, I'm reading the third one, but I don't have too high hopes for it, but I do recommend at least the first one if you just kind of want something fun. Oh, and I forgot to mention there's so much blood. Oh my gosh, these books, it's just, by the time you get to like the second one, you're just like, I don't even care about the blood anymore because it's just everywhere. It's a little over the top, but I guess she's trying to make it, yeah, it says dark, bloody, and monstrously romantic. It's supposed to be gothic, a blood-drenched, snow-frosted fairy tale. Very good for wintertime. The final book that I read in the month of January is The Automaton's Wife by Fareed Essani. This is the second book in the Society for Paranormal series. I read the first one last year, right when I had the baby, and I was like, okay, I could get into this series. It turns out there's 10 books in this series, and they all follow the same character. Her name's Beatrice, and she has moved to Africa with her kind of like adopted family that has taken her in because her parents died when she was younger. Now she's in her 20s, like 26, I believe it is. So she's kind of apparently past marriageable age and they just want to try to marry her off if at all possible though. So she is widowed though. She was married and her husband died, but he is a ghost who still follows her around, and his name is Gideon, and their relationship's just really kind of entertaining and funny. But Beatrice works for a society called the Society for the Paranormals, and the leader of the society is in fact a werewolf, which is kind of interesting. There is a lot going on. There's a lot of sort of history that I think is going to be introduced. It reminds me of the Vicky Bliss series by Elizabeth Peters, which I really enjoyed, but it is set in like early 1900s in Africa. The first book took place it was called Ghosts of Savo, and it was about the man-eating lions and how they'd already been killed, but they theoretically came back as ghosts, and she had to solve that mystery. So they're kind of like supernatural mysteries, I guess. This one follows, there's sort of a supernatural creature that comes into play. Her husband is missing with this robot type thing, like this automaton, whatever. So there's quite a bit going on. Her niece is engaged to somebody that is, or not her niece, but her cousin is engaged to somebody that's supernatural. It's just a conglomeration of things, honestly. There's not really one plot line in this book, which the plot took a while to develop. There's also a love interest character who I know she's gonna get with eventually. Like, I kind of spoiled myself for that and saw that she changed her last name to his name, so now I know who she winds up with, but he's a cool character that's very kind of morally gray. So anyway, I recommend it for just something fun. They're also really short. This book was about, I think, 286 pages or something, so it doesn't take super long to read them. I'm reading them as ebooks, and I'm definitely planning on continuing the series just between other books, just here and there. I'll pick up one just because it's something fun, sort of as a little palate cleanser between maybe larger fantasy works. I don't even want to talk too much about the next book because I didn't really like it. In November, I read Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Didn't care for it. It was like, whatever, very John Green-esque. It sounds like all of his other books, honestly. His characters all sound kind of the same to me or remind me of each other. It really focused more so on the main character's anxiety than I thought it was going to. I thought it was going to be more of a mystery because it's about how this girl, her friend that she's had since childhood but kind of lost touch with, his dad disappears, and I thought it was going to be them kind of trying to solve the mystery, but it's more so about her. It says her spiral of her own thoughts and her issues with anxiety. It was just kind of meh. I just don't like realistic fiction, I guess, and I don't even know why I read this. I did a lot of book talks on it and thought I would share it. I was sharing it with the kids and thought I'd read it, I guess. I don't know. Lastly, I'm in the middle of 2 books right now. I am 40-something% through Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, so I will tell you more about this next month, but so far, pretty good. Like, maybe not as good as I thought it was gonna be, and I liked the first like maybe 20% better than I am this part I'm reading now, but it's still pretty decent. And I am rereading the whole Mummy series by Anne Rice. This one's The Passion of Cleopatra. The 3rd book comes out today, the day that I'm filming this, and it's gonna be delivered to my house today. And it's called The Reign of Osiris. It's her last book she wrote before she died. She co-wrote these with her son, Christopher Rice, and I'm just a little over halfway through kind of quickly reading this, almost like skimming parts that I know I don't really care about anymore, just to remind myself though what's going on so that I can be ready for book 3, which comes out today. So obviously I'm reading it next in February. So those are all the books I read in January, and then also some in December and November. I had a really good reading month in January. The fact that I read 5 books is amazing. With the baby and everything, it's always super busy, but I made time. So I'm gonna hope to read just as many in February, and I'll let you know. So I will talk to you guys later. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.